All righty. Well, welcome to the June meeting of the Audit, Budget, and Finance Committee of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority, and thank you for being here. At this point, because of an illness, neither Chair Olson or Vice Chair Jursak are going to be with us. We will continue on as a committee of the whole. Director Sanfilippo is here with us today. So I'm just going to move on to the first order of business, noting that we are not going to have any votes on the resolutions, but we'll present them. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from the March 8th, 2023 meeting. A copy is in your board book under tab 1. Since we're in a committee of the whole, we won't have a vote on that motion. The next item of business is to review the final BFSA 2023-2024 budget and the related 2024-2027 four-year financial plan, and to recommend its approval to the full board. At our March meeting, the committee approved the public posting of the draft budget and financial plan on the BFSA website, as well as in all city public libraries. No comments were received. The draft financial plan and financial budget have been provided under tab 1 of the board book. I think if there are any additional questions, or Jeanette, is there anything else you'd like to say? You're
Sorry,
muted.
I was muted.
Sorry.
As far as the budget goes, we had the long opportunity to have those posted at the library. Nikita did distribute those pretty soon after our last meeting. Lots of opportunity was available for the public to review, make any comments on our budget. No such comments were received, so the budget is consistent with that was provided in March. And I do just want to say that we really do put the budget together with austerity as our key focus throughout the process. And
I've noticed that Dr. Jursak, or Vice Chair Jursak, is here now, so we would have a quorum at this point, and we could go on with our budget. Jeanette, to get you up to speed, we went over the minutes from our March 8th meeting, and we would now, they're in your board book. If
Yes.
you don't have any objections, I would ask for a motion to approve those minutes.
Well, first, this motion, please all should forgive me for being late. And to the motion on the minutes, yes, so moved.
And I will second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passed. Thank you. As we were just finishing up on the draft of the financial budget and the financial plan, we're asking for a motion to accept the BFSA's budget and financial plan.
So
Can I have a
moved.
Okay. Second, Jeanette, you were going to speak to that if there's anything else you'd like to say.
I was speaking to the fact that the budget really is created with austerity as the principal driving factor. We carefully look at our expenses. There are certain amounts budgeted, but if we don't need to expend those, they certainly aren't expended. And we try to maintain very level spending so the city can predict what the costs are going to be as they put their budgets together, and so forth as well. So that's just my overarching comment on that budget.
Are there any other comments? Andy, do you have any?
No.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, it passes. The final item of business is to discuss the bond pricing differential analysis as prepared by our financial advisors. Mary Francone is present today to discuss this item with us. Mary, could you provide us with an overview on your findings?
Sure. Thank you. If it's okay by you all, Whitney Warren, a senior managing consultant with PFM, has been the primary analyst on the assessment. And if it's okay by you, Whitney's going to walk through the analysis.
Oh, thank you, Whitney.
Thanks, Mary. Happy to just move through the memo that we provided to Jeanette and the authority. But I guess first and foremost, I just wanted to see if there was any questions, or Jeanette, if there's anything specifically you wanted me to focus on as we move through the memo.
While there's not anything specific to focus on in the memo, I think a little bit of background of how the calculation is conducted. I see there's two kind of scenarios that are run, and one of them is more comparable to what the city does versus the other.
Right.
But in terms of how the estimate is derived, underlying key assumptions would be really helpful.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. So our analysis looks at the pricing benefit of a hypothetical Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority pricing with their that's primarily derived from a superior credit rating. So what we did was we took the city of Buffalo's pricing and then we compared it to a hypothetical pricing of BFSA using market rates from the day of pricing that the city priced. I believe that was April 13th, and then asked our pricing group, several individuals who are routinely in the market, who price hundreds of, or who assist our clients in either pricing or coming up with scales several hundred times a year, to provide a hypothetical scale for, and by scale I mean spreads to AAA MMD of what they think the authority would have priced on that specific day. So taking into account where we were, what the market conditions were like on that specific day, rather than if spreads are widening or tightening at some other point in the year, they're really focused on that specific day and time and what the market shows. So we took that information and then we compared it to the city's pricing with two different structures. Last year, I believe, is the first year we may have provided those two different structures, Jeanette, but really it was an effort to, in one hand, just price level debt, which is a very base case structure for structuring debt. So level debt service every single year. It fluctuates maybe several dollars, but doesn't really change. And then the other was a level principal. So the principal is roughly the same in every year, whereas the interest will be, it means the debt service will be more front loaded rather than even throughout the full amortization of the debt. And that was an attempt to reflect or better mimic how the bonds actually priced. It wasn't perfect because I believe the city layers on different debt services based on the different projects and their useful life. But this was an attempt to have more of an apples to apples analysis and comparison of the two different of the two different credits. So we ran those. We just did the kind of basic analysis that you saw in the memo, and the other I think on the bottom of page 1 of the memo we show that pricing, that spread differential, and based on our pricing group's feedback, they felt that the BFSA would price anywhere from 9 to roughly 27 basis points tighter to MMD, in some cases through or less than MMD than the city of Buffalo did. The city of Buffalo on April 13th priced anywhere from 1 basis point through or under MMD all the way to 24 basis points wider on the final 2036 maturity. Our pricing group felt that on the front end of the yield curve, where we have this inversion currently, that the BFSA would price up to 15 basis points tighter than or through MMD. So a fairly significant benefit based on the AAA, AA1, AAA credit rating of BFSA. Based on that, as well as based on the, we do, of course, always factor in the additional cost of issuance, and we estimated that at I would say, a conservative $100,000 for issuing through BFSA. We came out to a roughly $150,000 to $180,000 benefit on a PV basis by issuing through BFSA. On a gross basis, that would be anywhere from 180 to 210,000, and that's just based on those two different amounts are based on the different structures. In some cases, one is more efficient structuring of debt than the other. So,
Okay, can I just jump right in here?
absolutely.
Okay, those two levels of savings that you gave us, based on the level debt service and the level principal scenario, is that the ones you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay. The $182,173. Now, I'm assuming that's over the life of the bond issue.
Correct.
And are we talking about a 13-year bond?
Yes.
Okay, so you're talking about like $16,305 per year on the one scenario, and only $12,257 a year on the other scenario, right?
Correct.
Okay. Were these bonds going to be issued longer than 13 years? Were they going to go out 20?
We did an apples to apples comparison, so we were really only looking at the same. We were evaluating it based on the same final maturity.
Okay. Is there comparisons between what you guys are including with versus what the city's financial advisors are calculating?
I can't. Well, I can speak to the fact that I think as a financial advisor, and had we been the FA on a BFSA transaction, we certainly would have looked at multiple scenarios, but also considering what worked for BFSA. If it was something that they were open to a longer amortization, then we can certainly look at that. Obviously, as you go higher up, as you go longer out, although the yield curve currently is a little funky, if you were to go out 30 years, you're going to have a higher interest rate on the long end of that. But certainly that's something that we consider and discuss with Jeanette and determine what would make the most sense for BFSA. Given that this sale was really just this task was really just a comparative analysis, we didn't look at a longer amortization of the debt, but certainly something that we could do.
Okay. As relates to your credit ratings, is there any particular reason why you don't have a S&P rating?
Andy, this is Jeanette. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Ultimately, we haven't issued debt in so long that I haven't pursued getting an S&P rating. In the event that we would sell a bond, that's something that we would consult our financial advisor with in terms of who we should get ratings from.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
well,
not
just-
sure what the history is on
Fine,
that
I
one.
want to compare apples to apples, but in the event, how many? Okay, the city's credit rating is A1 stable by Moody's and A+ stable by S&P. How many levels below is the city's credit ratings versus what you guys are at BFSA?
So BFSA has a AAA rating from Fitch and a AA1 rating from Moody's. And so the Moody's rating is basically 3 notches higher than what the city of Buffalo has. The one thing I would note is that when you sort of move in from one rating category, so the city is considered within the A category, which is A-, A flat, A+, or A1, A2, A3. Once you sort of move into a different rating category, in this case, the AA rating category, you tend to see a larger variation in credit spreads.
Very well, sir.
Okay. This AAA stable Fitch rating you guys have, Jeanette, how long has that rating been in place since you guys first issued bonds?
How long have we been AAA rated?
Yeah.
I could look that up for you, Andy. I don't know what year that was off the top of my head. It's been it's been a number of years. We've been AAA.
5 years?
All right. So you guys you guys haven't reapplied or at least got an updated rating from Fitch. And obviously since your finances don't change because your ratings are based upon secured revenues that the city gets in the way of whether it's state aid or sales tax, I would have to assume that perhaps the rating, wouldn't change as much. I just kind of smile at the way rating agencies attribute the ratings for the city, even though, for 35 or 40 years, the city has had a capital debt service fund that guarantees all its debt at the outset before it could even use any of its property tax revenues or collections. So I've always been suspicious of how the credit ratings look at the city of Buffalo, knowing that there are AAA guarantees versus how they rate the BFSA's credit. So has nothing to do with what your analysis does. This is just an observation that I've come to realize that as secure as the city's ability to pay back its outstanding debt service, it's almost mind-boggling how the credit rating agencies distinguish or differentiate between our rating and yours.
Right, Andy, and I think also having the control board in place also should have a positive influence, I would think, on the rating for the city of Buffalo.
That's what their analysis says. But overall, as far as the ability to pay its bonds, its debt service, it's somewhat comical.
Yes, I agree.
Andy's right that you could scratch your head about this, but I think Fred's right in saying that there's an intangible value. We are an authority of the state of New York, and there simply is, an intangible plus that the city doesn't have. Even though Andy is right, the ability to pay to service debt, the city's ability to pay is certainly not in question, but we have this intangible plus. Does that sound right to that assumption, that thesis? Does that sound right to council?
So what I would say is that the ratings are relative. They're statements of relativity. And so they occur on a scale. And so they're really not an absolute statement of ability and willingness to repay your debt. It's really intended as a guide to investors on, who might be a stronger credit. It's intended to be comparative, again, and relative. And so while at the A1, A+ ratings, the ability and willingness of the city of Buffalo to service their debt is really not in question. On a relative basis, the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority is a stronger credit because of you're limited, the carve out of your revenues, the specific pledge, the kind of a lot of the mechanisms that have been put in place for you to be able to service your debt, as well as your limited operations. Despite the fact that the city of Buffalo is going to make the deposits initially, it has all of its operations that could actually potentially put their willingness and ability to service their debt at not at risk, but it's priorities, right?
Well, contrary to that argument, the similar argument holds for the city of Buffalo too. Its debt service is from secured revenues, and so if that argument is wholly true for the BFSA, it also holds true for the city of Buffalo. Their revenues are secured prior to the expenditure for any other obligations. So it's
I'm not necessarily defending the ratings.
Yes.
I'm
the BFSA,
just communicating to you what we know as the process and the criteria and the analytics around it.
Yeah, which, to believe it or not, it's hypocritical, to be honest. So I stand by that.
Thanks, Sandy. Whitney or Mary, can you talk a little bit about the changing interest rate environment and what you would see in the future, if not for this year, because we picked one day, but going into the future and what you think you would see?
I can speak a little to that, and Mary can fill in whatever I'm not hitting on. I think obviously there's been a fair amount of volatility over the last year in the interest rate environment. The yield curve is inverted, and therefore, there's a with rates, I think, reaching the bottom, at least from on MMD's curve, and the kind of 8 or 9 year range. It's an interesting time to think about where to structure debt and where to put principal. So as far as looking forward, I think we can look at economists' perspectives and points of view and what the Fed's saying. And I think that while the recent slowdown in interest rate increases, although acknowledging that they may have to have more, 1 or 2 more, I believe, increases in the future, but they're taking a pause for now is somewhat promising, although I don't know that investors were necessarily expecting the kind of acknowledgement by Powell that there may be more increases in the future. But all that to say is, we do keep in mind what economists are forecasting, but it's anyone's guess what will actually happen, and we certainly don't make suggestions or recommendations based on those projections or predictions, because it's not something that we would do or we would recommend. So I would say that if you wanted to, the Bloomberg survey of economists estimates that interest rates will begin to decline, especially on the front end, towards the end of this year, early next, and continue that downward slope, especially on the front end of the yield curve through 2025. But global changes can affect that. Any utterance of interest rate hikes from Powell can affect that, and so it's something to be taken with a grain of salt.
The one thing that I'll add is what we've seen over the past year is that those credit spreads have widened with the rise in interest rates. And so the relative cost of borrowing for BFSA versus the city of Buffalo has actually gotten a little bit better. The savings associated with a higher rating are greater today than they were, say, a year ago.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or any questions?
Yeah, this is Andy again. You know, you're going over the differences in cost savings over a 13-year amortization period. I would look at whether it's the 16,305 or the 12,257 per year as being totally insignificant when you're dealing with like a combined budget of $1.8 billion with fund balances of over $300 million. I would think that somehow is accurate, or at least proposed savings on debt service. When you think about the two entities, when you combine their total fund balances, you have to think that those $12,000 a year savings is relatively insignificant.
Jeanette?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I agree, Andy. We're certainly not making a recommendation based on this analysis that, there should be borrowing on behalf of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. I think it's just a consideration and a reflection. There's so much dialogue during the year about the credit rating difference between the city of Buffalo and BFSA that it closes the loop in terms of taking a look at what could have been there. Some years it's more significant than others, but it certainly isn't at an amount where we would make a recommendation either way.
Okay, and let me just personally say that I don't have any disagreement with PFM's analysis. Okay, so I don't want you to think that somehow my position on this is a reflection on the performance that PFM did in providing this analysis. Okay.
Sounds good. And while we were chatting, I did look up, you were asking about when the last time ratings were reaffirmed. Fitch reaffirmed in July of 2022, and Moody's reaffirmed in June of 2022. So they did a full-blown review and analysis just about a year ago.
Okay, well, it's not going to change as long as they're looking at the secured, guaranteed revenue stream coming on behalf of the city. Your ratings aren't going to change.
Correct. We were hoping for maybe an upgrade from Moody's, but we did not receive that one.
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. Yes.
Just this final observation. Andy is right, and Jeanette concurred that the amount of savings, especially computed annually, is not even a droplet in the bucket. However, is it not true, and I'm asking the older hands on the board, is it not true that across time, the aggregate across time, let's say 10 years worth of bond placement by the city as opposed to us, wouldn't the savings, again aggregated, have been much more than the droplet? Wouldn't the savings have been, how should I put it, aggregated quite a bit across all of the bond placements the city has done in 10 years?
Well, to answer your question, Jeanette, at the time, the city of Buffalo's credit rating was at a BAA1, I believe. So over time now, to go from BAA1 credit rating up to an A1 stable by Moody's and A+ stable by S&P, that would pretty much shrink the aggregate number over time. And don't forget, the control board came into existence in 2003. So, and in that time, the city was able to, along with the school district, generate significant fund balance. So the answer is yes. I would say early on, which is when the control board did issue bonds on behalf of the city. It was significant, but I think, 20 years later, that argument doesn't hold.
All right.
And are you able to see my screen?
Yes?
Yes.
All right, so what I pulled up while you were talking, and it
There it
affirms
is.
what Andy was just talking about, is the schedule that shows by year. I haven't updated it for the schedule that we just went through for 2023, but by year, what the calculated theoretical savings were between a BFSA issue and a City of Buffalo issue to understand what the cumulative impact of that would be. So the present value savings since BFSA moved into an advisory period is 2.2 million, and then we would add another 200,000 to that, so about 2.4 million since we shifted it into advisory mode.
This is the theoretical savings. No, it's not theoretical. This is the result of our computation of our record. And these numbers are impeccable. Okay. All right. So Andy's point holds. Historically, viewed historically, how should I put it? Our argument and our sort of irritation some years ago, why not use our strength, our rating strength? That argument is significantly weakened, that we should probably just let this go for now. Does that sound right?
I think it's worth keeping an eye on the markets to see how the spread continues, but I suspect the reason why the numbers were so much larger back in 2016 was due to a wider credit rating difference. So, I mean, from the last couple of years, our ratings, the City of Buffalo has a good rating. Even though ours is higher, theirs is still quite good from an investment grade perspective. And yeah, I think it's good to keep the calculations continuing, but I would agree with your assessment, Dr. Jurasek, that it's not significant enough.
Okay.
Well, good. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
As moved.
Okay, second. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned, and I think we'll be moving relatively soon into our full board meeting. So I think,
Just stay plugged in, right?
yeah,
Okay.
Thank you, Mary and Whitney.
thank you.
Now, Director Floss, Mark Cornell is going to be joining us at 1:30.
Okay, so do we need to wait for quorum?
We don't have to wait for quorum, but we have to wait for quorum to do the
Vote.
approval of the minutes. Yes, and the vote, exactly. But we can start reviewing the district's financial plan.
Okay. So if you want to put us on, we can get started. Nikita, is that live on YouTube?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you. You're welcome.
welcome to the June meeting of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. Thank you for being here. Our agenda today includes a review of the city's budget, of Buffalo's adopted budget, and the draft of Buffalo's City School District financial plan. At the end of the meeting, an executive session has been scheduled to receive legal advice. Additionally, the Audit, Finance, and Budget Committee met earlier today to review the proposed BFSA 2023-2024 budget and the accompanying four-year financial plan, and has recommended this item be approved by the full board. Let's begin with a roll call. Executive Director Rowe. You're muted again, Jeanette.
Thank you. I apologize. Chair Olson is excused. Vice Chair Jurasek,
Present.
Director Floss,
Present.
Director Sanfilippo,
Present.
Director Mayor Brown,
Present.
County Executive Mark Polenkars will be in attendance shortly at 1:30. We have 4 in attendance, 1 coming.
Right. So we don't have quorum at this time. I'm going to move the approval of the minutes until the director comes, but we can start to talk about the review of the adopted city budget. A BFSA report on this item is provided under tab 3 of your board book, along with a copy of the Common Council amendments to the proposed budgets. Bryce, will you review this with us, please?
I will. Just give me a moment to pull up the presentation. Find the right one. Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the board today. I'm going to begin with the city's 23-24 adopted budget. The total estimated revenue for fiscal year 23-24 was reduced by $5 million. The reduction of the revenue was in regards to the cannabis excise tax, reduced by $5 million down to $3.1 million in fiscal year 23-24. The reduction in the cannabis excise tax is not expected to be carried out over the 4-year financial plan. Total budget appropriations were likewise reduced by $5 million. The expenditure adjustments are not expected to be carried forward through the entire financial plan either. So the city's adopted 23-24 budget provides for general fund expenditures of revenues of $577 million, representing an increase of $10.3 million or 1.8% over the current year adopted budget amount of $566.7 million. The next few slides, we're going to discuss the reductions the Common Council made for expenditure appropriations. So under departmental personal service costs, it was a net decrease of $3.1 million. That includes a reduction of $2 million in police department overtime and a reduction of $1.5 million for fire department overtime. The other side of the coin here is that there were additional positions added or title changes for a total increase of $400,000. So total overtime was reduced by $3.5 million. Salary, title, and position changes increase of $400,000 to get us to a net decrease of 3.1. Under departmental services, they are increased by $990,000 on a net basis, including an increase of $1.1 million for a contract with Axon Technology for the police department. This increase in departmental service costs is offset by a reduction, multiple reductions of $110,000 for outside vendors conducting background checks and then programs in the mayor's office. Additional departmental level decreases include a reduction of $850,000 for departmental supplies. This includes a decrease of $300,000 for gasoline and lubricants, decrease of $300,000 for postage, decrease of $220,000 for non-capital equipment and furniture, and a decrease of $27,000 for office supplies. Under departmental travel, that's a decrease of $223,000, and that includes reduction of 115,000 for membership fees and registrations, reduction of 41,000 for meals and lodging, and decreases of 35,000 for transportation and 32,000 for periodicals. Moving down to fringe benefits, general service charges, subcategory fringe benefits, there's a decrease of 1.8 million for health insurance, a decrease of 932,000 for retiree health insurance, and then a decrease of 843,000 for active employee health insurance. So this chart here, which was included in the memo, is just showing the changes between the proposed budget to the adopted budget. You'll be familiar with all the amounts I just ran through right there. As you can see, personal services at 3.1. So in total, departmental totals being reduced by 3.2 million. General charges in total are being reduced by 1.8 million to get us to that reduction of 5 million in appropriations. At this time, BFSA recommends against reduction of police and fire overtime. Historically, it's been under budgeted and should be budgeted at realistic level. So that brings me to the end of the review of the city's adopted budget.
Bryce, it's Andy.
Yes.
I noticed in the review or the analysis of the school district, you guys had a separate section on fund balance. What is the city's actual fund balance at June 30th? We have a number.
Yeah, I'd have to pull it. I think for June 30th, 2022, total fund balance was approximately, I want to say 124,000 or 124 million. And I think 24 of that was unassigned. But in regards to the current year end estimate for June 30th, 2023, based on third quarter results, we're actually looking at 90.4 million in unrestricted fund balance. Now that's an estimate. There'll be some adjustments to it, but just in unrestricted, it's approximately 90.4 million estimated for current year end.
90.4 million in unrestricted fund balance projected for year end, right?
Correct. Now, I believe last year that amount was closer to 82 million in unrestricted.
Okay.
And as you're aware, the unrestricted includes categories committed, I'm sorry, unassigned, committed, and assigned.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious as to how significant, like between the school district, they're talking 321 million in fund balance, and then you add, and there's 90 million of unrestricted fund balance for the city. I mean, that's pretty significant, wouldn't you think? Maybe they should apply for a credit rating increase. Never mind, guys. That was levity.
Yes. So we get it, Andy. I do think that there are recommendations from the comptroller's office on fund balance, and I'm not sure that the unrestricted is above the top of that at this point, but I may be wrong.
Well, you know, we haven't got to the board yet, but I'll save that. But
Yeah.
you know, when you have a $1 billion budget and you also have $321 million of fund balance, that's way beyond what anybody's expectations would be at this point.
You mean in the world of business?
No, and of the assumptions, but Andy, I think we do have to split them up between the school districts' fund balance and the cities, because they're controlled essentially by two different entities. Wouldn't you agree?
but at the same time, there's still reporting components of the city under our jurisdiction. And, you know, if the cities, you know, I'm just thinking out loud here. I mean, if I'm the city of Buffalo right now, and we're looking at perhaps down the line and over the next 4 years, you know, some significant reduction in fund balance, I would think that they may want to review how much they want to give to the school district from tax revenue.
Right. Now, Andy, have you
You know,
thought about, you know, other, I guess my real concern with all of that would be the issue of what's going to happen to property taxes given the changes and the vacancies, particularly in commercial properties, and whether or not going forward, you know, we would see the same kind of property tax revenues that we've seen over the last few years as people are working from home, and therefore there's a consolidation of the need for commercial properties, in particular in the downtown area.
Which would make it all the more precious than for the city, because they will probably see if there's reassessments or because of all the vacant commercial property, and if they start if there's a reduction in their property tax contribution, that would play right into the hands of like, well, wait a minute, you know, the school district, you know, has like 34% of their budget is in fund balance. The city may have to sacrifice or should consider what other revenue reduction options they're being confronted with. That's what I'm just saying. I mean, in all my years of being involved in government and public finance, I've never seen fund balances at the level of which the Buffalo Public School District is experiencing right now.
Okay.
You know, so, I mean, because we all know, you know, every year, you know, the AIM funding across the state has been stable for the last, 10 or 12 years. In the meantime, though, aid to education has increased significantly. I don't have any numbers on it, but at the same time, I realize that education has become more of a priority at the state budget level than the providing of city services. So I would think that at some point, and I'm not speaking for the mayor's office, I'm just more or less saying they may have to reconsider just where, you know, how they're going to make up for some loss in revenues. That's all.
Okay, so you're not talking about increasing the amount to give to the school district. You're talking about whether or not they can decrease it. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
I just want to be clear.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's what I mean, that's listen, it's not my call. I'm just saying that based on the fact that the point you made relative to you know, the vacancy rates on commercial property and, you know, probably readjustments of their taxes may have a huge impact on the city's ability to raise revenue.
Right. Okay. I understand now. I guess I was a little confused about your argument at one point because I thought you were talking about the city giving more money to the school district, but I think we're clear now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Is there any more discussion or comments on this item? If not, let's move on to the next item, which we've already started discussing anyway, which is the adoption of the Buffalo City School District and the draft financial plan. The District Board of Education is expected to vote on the draft budget at its meeting later today. Two separate submissions from the BFSA staff are provided under tab 4 in your board book related to the review and the analysis of these items. Nathan and Jeanette, can you walk us through these? Nathan, I think you're up first.
Very good. Let me just share my screen. Good afternoon, everybody. The following is a review of the Buffalo City School District's 2023-24 adopted budget and their 2024-27 draft financial plan. I'll summarize the adopted budget first, and then following our conclusions, move on into the draft financial plan. The Buffalo Board of Ed adopted the budget back on May 24th. The draft budget has not been formally adopted, but is expected to be considered later on tonight at the board meeting. The adopted budget includes a few items here that I summarize. Year-to-year general fund estimated revenue increases of $79.5 million or 8.1%. Year-to-year general fund budgeted appropriation increases of $82.6 million, also 8.1%. A deficit of $37.7 million. A subsequent fund balance appropriation of the same amount to eliminate the deficit, which is equivalent to 3.4% of total general fund expenditures. And then on the budgeted staffing side, a net increase of budgeted positions, just over 62 full-time equivalent positions for the general fund and 55 on all funds basis. This table breaks everything out or summarizes all of the general fund revenues and expenditures. And then it compares it to the prior fiscal year's adopted budget. And for historical context here, I added in the projections, the district's projections at the end of the third quarter. And I'll take a closer look at all of those categories in a second. So as noted, the school district has received a significant amount of funding increases over the last few years, both from the New York State, from New York State, but also from the federal government. New York State has provided significant increases, primarily within foundation aid, beginning in fiscal year 22, then continuing all the way through 23-24. So if you use 2021 as a baseline, the cumulative increase over those 3 years is $261.2 million. Year-to-year increase is projected at $68.4 million or 11%. And then this third bullet point here, this is the total New York State increase, including foundation aid and building aid and all the other smaller aids. They're net $75.2 million greater in the 23-24 adopted budget. On the federal level, the district has received ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 federal rescue funds totaling $289.6 million from 21-22 through 23-24. And of that, only the ESSER 3 funds are available in the coming fiscal year. The amount remaining is $91.4 million. None of this is reflected within the general fund, excepting for $8 million from indirect cost expenditures recorded as revenues. So it's all recorded within the general, not the general fund, but within the special projects fund of the grants fund. Okay, taking a closer look at the adopted budget's revenues, you can see here that I break it out by category here. The main increases are within the New York State aid, less building aid, which is increasing 11.2%, $81.1 million. There's also an increase with Erie County sales tax. Sales tax is favorable in the current fiscal year. The 23-24 adopted budget builds off of that and projects it to be $4.5 million or 9.2% greater than the prior year. And then at the bottom there, I just give a little breakout of the main buckets of New York State aid to show what's driving the large increase. And here we break out the adopted budget expenditures, compare them with the prior year's adopted budget, the current year's adopted budget. Break out employee compensation, benefits, debt service, charter school payments, transportation expenditures, a reserve for contingency, and then a miscellaneous all other expenditures. Overall, on a budget to budget basis, general fund expenditures are increasing 82.6 million or 8.1%. Employee compensation increases close to 20 million or just under 6%. This includes salary for all of the collective bargaining units. It includes the recent settlements for all the, the 3 of the 4 that were settled in the current fiscal year, excepting for the BTF. The employee compensations and benefits for BTF are included within the budget as a whole. They're not included in the employee compensation categories yet. They're within the reserve contingency, which I'll show a little bit later. But I did want to point that out, that the way that BTF employee compensation is viewed within the adopted budget is not the entirety of the anticipated need, but the full amount is included within the budget as a whole. And then we have BFSA's estimate for the current, for 23-24. We estimated that based on the current staffing model, the net cost would be just over 41 million on a general fund basis and just under 50 million on an all funds basis. Okay, so as I mentioned, there is a reserve contingency. The total contingency in 23-24 is 63.6 million. And to break that out, 40.5 million of that is for settled labor contracts. That's the BTF contract. That number there will likely be reduced via budget transfers to various BTF compensation lines in the modified budget and then throughout the fiscal year.
Mhm.
There's the second reserve contingency here of 19.1 million. BTF contract included a lot of retroactive increases, including bonuses. The assumption is that these are funded through ESSER 2 funds, so therefore grant funded. However, if the case that were somehow not permittable to the extent as expected, this $19.1 million is available as a contingency to cover those expenditures. And then there's this other smaller $4 million general contingency for miscellaneous needs. Employee benefits increase 8.2 million or 4.2%. And I rolled up a couple of categories that show the major changes here. Combined active and retiree health insurance increased 4.7 million or 4%. The current New York State ERS, New York State TRS, and Social Security will be adjusted as needed with via the reserve contingency. So the next area is charter school tuition payments. These are increasing 4.3 or 2.8% on a budget to budget basis. The increase is based on 2 things: increased projected enrollment of up to 11,100 pupils in charter schools. It would be a 7.1% increase over the third quarter actual count. And the second component of that is a tuition rate increase of $500 on a per pupil. Okay. So this slide here takes a look at historic district, charter school, and total public school enrollment. I highlight at the bottom there that there was the 4 years that of the COVID-19 pandemic, you saw a decline in district enrollment. Enrollment is projected to decrease in the 23-24 school year by about 200 pupils. That's a decrease from the March 31st count. The estimate is 29,578. Charter school pupils are projected to increase over the current count. And overall, public school, when you combine the two, that is projected to increase about a little over 500 pupils. Transportation expenditures increase as well by a little over 7 million. Just gonna tweak something here quickly. This is based on the anticipated level of transportation services to be offered by the district in the coming school year. The last several years have been heavily impacted by the pandemic. The 23-24 school year is anticipated to be more of a traditional model. However, there will be a transition from a 2-tiered to a 3-tiered bell time system. And this was permitted under the new BTF labor agreement. The intent is to improve service and to help alleviate the bus driver shortage issue. It will also provide transportation expenditure savings beginning in 23-24 of $4 million. That amount increases annually, or is anticipated to increase annually. However, because school districts receive a reimbursement for their prior fiscal year transportation expenditures, the impact of those savings becomes less in year 2 by about $3.5 to $3.4 million. So they're getting a large chunk of the money back in the form of New York State aid in the following year. And then finally, the miscellaneous category, all of their expenditures are increasing just under 17 million or 12.6% on a budget to budget basis. The large components of this are increases as per the 22-23 operating engineers labor settlement that occurred during the school year. 6.3 million or about 22% increase overall. And then also increasing our rental and miscellaneous contracts, which increased by a combined 6.8 million or about 16% as well. I just wanted to take a second to give an update on other post-employment benefits. As everyone knows, the district has significant accrued liabilities for OPEB. The OPEB liability has decreased from the June 30th, 2021 assessment from 2.5 billion to June 30th, 2022 to 1.7 billion. And I am noting that within fund balance, there is an assigned category that totaled 70 million at June 30th, 2022. District has been actively examining and implementing additional cost-saving measures to address this long-term liability. The CBAs with BTF and the BCSA provided terms that allowed for growth in the long-term liability to decrease. One of the main driving factors between the year-to-year assessment decrease here too is that there were changes in assumptions and other inputs. So just to conclude, for the adopted budget, the district has presented a balanced 23-24 budget. It's balanced with the use of 37.7 million in fund balance, which of course is a non-recurring source of funding. And BFSA notes that a structural deficit exists. Secondly, New York State has provided a significant increase in foundation aid totaling 688.8 million, which is an increase of $668.6 million. The increase reflects the final year of the New York State commitment to fully fund foundation aid. So 23-24 is year 3 of the full phase in to the foundation aid formula. In addition to state aid, unprecedented levels of federal aid were previously awarded to the district to address a multitude of issues resulting from the pandemic. And these all are recorded within the Special Projects Fund. The total amount over the 3 years was just under 290 million. The district has 91.4 million in funding and appropriations over the 23-24 fiscal year. That concludes my review of the adopted budget. If there aren't questions, I can move along into the 4-year financial plan. Okay.
No, Nathan,
Yes.
you maintain for us, and you do so with utmost precision, the longitudinal graphic of census numbers, district and and other. I know you have the annual numbers of faculty FTE, because you've rendered that separately for us. Do you also have, parallel to the longitudinal trend line of faculty FTE, do you have one for overall employees? Everyone.
Sure. I can do that for you.
If the others, if the other directors think that has utility, along with the historical view of student headcount, we have a teacher headcount, and then how about an overall employee headcount trend number? Well, it's not a trend; it's a line. If the others think that's valuable, perhaps you could assemble that as just the companion. It's a companion graphic to the student headcount graphic.
I have a slide that shows total all funds positions and total general fund positions. There's a historical and then the new staffing model. But if you'd like, I could also break that out by employee category, like teachers and other employees, and compare it to pupils as well.
As finally as you can split it without, how should I put it, making it meaningless, because it's too granular. It's too small.
No, that wouldn't be a heavy lift at all. I could certainly assemble that.
I think it would be a useful companion to the what in the private sector would be called the customer headcount longitudinal graphic.
Andy, did you have a question?
I was just going to go back to this other post-employment benefits. Nathan, I mean, that's a pretty significant drop in its liability. Is that because people are dying?
There's a multitude of factors behind that. I don't have them on hand now, but I could tell you from a high level, some of the change is a change in the discount rate. Some of the change is some of the contractual changes that the district have implemented in recent labor agreements. And then there's just a change in population as well, but I couldn't speak to it with any more specificity than that. The total number of people has increased though.
Andy, I think, Andy, remember that this is a calculation over 75 years. So small changes in interest rates have a real impact on these numbers.
Okay.
And they do vary by a lot because of that, because of the 75-year basis. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the actuarial process works, but I was just saddened. I'm not sad because the costs are going down, but I'm just sad. Is that because people are passing away? And I was, disheartened by that. If that was part of it.
Good. Thanks, Andy. Do you want to go on, Nathan?
Certainly. Okay, so the following is a review of the draft 2024-2027 financial plan. The financial plan includes the following. There are budgetary deficits in each year ranging from 29.4 million to 40.1 million. The cumulative deficit is 145.5 million. There are a total of 291.2 million in the various contingency reserves over the 4 years. Recently settled BTF compensation and benefits and future labor negotiations total 248.1 million over the 4 years. This is the main part of the reserve contingency. It's for allocating funds in 23-24 for the recently settled contract, and then in the out years as well. And then also as contracts expire over the 4 years, to have funds available to allocate towards those new expenditures. Then I point out here that BTF estimated a $241.4 million general fund impact to be allocated for the BTF contract based on the new staffing model within the draft financial plan. The number's a little bit different than what was reported before, and that's 2024 through 2027. And including the 4th year of the plan where the contract would be expired. And then as noted earlier, there's 19.1 million in 23-24 in case the grant funding would not be permitted for those BTF retroactive payments and bonuses. Okay, so this table here just summarizes everything within the financial plan, gives the total revenues, total expenditures. It shows the, what the financial plan deficits are in each of the 4 years, and then breaks out the fund balance that would be appropriated to address those deficits. With a $145.5 million deficit and the same amount in total fund balance, the deficit is reduced to 0. And then finally at the bottom there, it just shows how much of that deficit as a percent of total general fund appropriations. So key observations: the financial plan general fund revenues increase at a CAGR of, I've heard it both ways, CAGR or CAGR. So I'll just say compound annual growth rate of 1.27% over the plan. General fund expenditures increase at the same compound annual growth rate of 1.24%. It's slightly different for revenues, but not significantly so. Expenditures exceed revenues in each year. And so a deficit is present in all fall years that fluctuates between 29.6 and a high of 40.1 million. Okay. As noted, the district does have sufficient fund balance available to fund the projected deficits over the 4 years. Another observation is that all collective bargaining units funded through the general fund will have active labor agreements in 23-24, with the exception of the substitute administrators, which expires at the end of the fiscal year. And then I note here that along with the draft financial plan, the Board of Education is scheduled to review a tentative agreement with BFSA at this evening's board meeting. There has not been a submission to the BFSA for this. Another labor agreement is also on their agenda this evening. It's for food service workers that does not impact the general fund, but does impact the food service fund.
Thank you.
So another key observation is that several of the main cost drivers for the district have reduced rates of increase over the financial plan, including health insurance for both active employees and retirees, as well as the tuition payments, the pension payments. These are areas where the rates of increase are higher than average for a lot of the other expenditures, but we've noticed that the rate of increase has diminished over, there's a trend, there's a diminishing rate of increase over the last several fiscal years. And so it's worth pointing that out. This next point, I have a slide that'll show it a little bit better, but city resident public pupil enrollment has declined significantly over the past 5 school years. And the slide coming up is the one I showed during the adopted budget, but it extends out an additional 3 years. So the decline has occurred slowly within district schools, which have seen a decline of just over 3,700 pupils from 33,337 in 18-19 to the current 23-24 pupil estimated count of 29,578. While district enrollment has decreased over the last 4 school years, charter school enrollment has continued to increase over the same period from just over 9,000 to the current 23-24 pupil estimated count of 11,100. The financial plan projects enrollment to decrease 200 pupils annually And I will show you that in 1 second here. This is the historical and the projected district, charter school, and combined public school enrollment. It's the same exact table I showed earlier, but I now show 25, 26, and 27.
Nathan, there was a discussion of lost students that seemed to have either dropped out or somehow just weren't accounted for. Do we know, has that been put into these projections? And are we doing anything? I know Jim's here and I want to thank him for that, for coming today, but do we know whether or not we expect any of them to come back? Are we looking at GEDs? Are we looking at a program to get these folks into the workforce?
Sure, I could address that briefly and say that this is not, the financial plan doesn't say, explain why the count is, but it does give the estimate of what they expect enrollment to be in the coming years. But I could defer to the CFO Barnes on that issue to give more detail.
Hello, everybody. And at this point right now, I don't have much more to elaborate. Again, this being our financial plan, we wanted to accurately and conservatively recognize and project the decline in BPS enrollment. Because that's a big impact on our foundation aid. And we also wanted to reflect the continuing upward trend in charter schools because of the opening of the Brick Charter School and seven other charter schools expanding their grade levels. What we've seen, the pandemic has changed a lot of things in so many areas. One is that we can't directly do a one-to-one correlation between this loss in BPS and the gains in charter schools. We're still investigating the difference of where some of those other kids are while we continue to do everything within our power to bring kids back. Sort of a general answer, but we don't have much more than that at this point.
So you're just continuing the trends from before, mainly looking at numbers and not trying to make any other adjustments. Is that appropriate?
No, we're trying to make adjustments, sure, with our programming and our outreach, but I'm not reflecting any of that in this financial plan.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
So just to take a look at the financial plan, the available and projected fund balance. The district's fund balance position has improved considerably over the last 6 fiscal years. Fund balance totaled 182.6 million, including 70 million in unassigned fund balance back at the end of fiscal year 26 or 16 and 17. The projected 22-23 fund balance is projected to be 321 million, including 123.5 million for unassigned fund balance. Fund balance at this level, unassigned fund balance at this level exceeds the Board of Education's 4% readiness policy by 79.4 million. And because the financial plan uses a significant amount of fund balance to balance, total fund balance over the financial plan decreases by 175.5 million at June 30th, 2027, which would be an decrease of 45.3% from the end of the current fiscal year. And then likewise, unassigned fund balance is projected to significantly decrease as well to 45.8 million by the end of the plan. And I can show you that on a slide here.
Yep.
There we go. It shows the close to 65% increase projected at the current fiscal year, and then the decrease over the financial plan. Okay, Just to take a quick look at the general fund revenues over the plan. Everything's broken out here. The main areas of increase are with New York State aid, less building aid, which goes up close to 75 million over the plan, or just over 9%. Likewise, I just want to point out that New York State building aid does decline by about 31 million over the same period, or about 28%. Overall, revenues are increasing 41 million, or just under 4%. And this looks at the roll up all of the main categories for general fund expenditures. Expenditures totaled 1,102.7 million in the adopted budget, projected to total 1,144.4 million by 26-27, an increase of 47.7 million, or 3.8% over the financial plan. General fund expenditures for employee compensation is budgeted at 362.8 million, and the adopted budget increases 5.7 million, or 1.6% over the financial plan. But as noted, this amount excludes a portion for the recently settled labor agreements, and then for the costs for future labor contract settlement costs, which are included within the reserve contingency. Couple items on this slide. On the top is district-wide full-time equivalent employee counts. The higher line is on an all funds basis. The blue line is general fund basis. And I point out that with the federal stimulus funds, there were an additional 326 FTEs added over that period. On the bottom, this is just the special projects fund budgeted positions. So in year 3 of 3 of the federal funding, budgeted positions are 1,020. And then in the 3 out years of the financial plan, there's a decrease of the 326 FTEs that were funded with the federal rescue dollars down to 694 positions.
Andy, did you have a question?
Nope.
Just a quick look at benefits. The district has included 204.4 million for employee benefits in the adopted budget. These increased by just under 20 million, or 9% over the financial plan. The main drivers of the increase are active and retiree health insurance, and also a little bit with New York State pensions with the ERS and the TRS. Charter school tuition payments increased 27.3 million, or 17.2% over the plan. District is projecting increase from 11,100 to 12,000 over the plan. And then, as with the adopted budget, there's a continuing assumption of the charter school tuition rate increase. The rate would increase up to 15,517 per pupil by year 4. Transportation expenditures total 61.4 million in the adopted budget, and increase 5.7 million, or 9.3% over the financial plan. This is a more traditional transportation model for the district. The last several years have obviously been atypical, to be mild. And then I just point out here the relationship between transportation expenditures and then the subsequent year New York State transportation aid, where a large portion of what was paid out, 87%, is given back in the form of New York State aid in the following year. This table shows the reserve contingency in all 4 years of the financial plan. It increases from 63.6 million in 23-24 up to 80 million in 25-26, and then staying at that level in the following year, the combined amount in total contingency is 291.2 million. The largest portion of that is the top line there, the 248.1 million. And that's for, as mentioned, for recently settled BTF contract, and then in the other years there for the as contracts expire, those reserve funds are reserved a contingency for the new prospective costs of contract negotiations. The third line there is a return of English language training programs. These are programs that were funded with federal stimulus in years 2, 3, and 4. There's 6 million in reserve contingency to continue those programs. Then finally, with all other expenditures, these increase 4.5 million or 3% over the financial plan. And just quickly here, the adopted budget for 23-24 builds off of the current year's projection and then applies various inflationary rates to the respective expenditure categories of anywhere from 0% to 3%, depending on what would be more appropriate. And that concludes the general fund. This is a snapshot of the special projects fund or grants fund. See that in year 1 of the financial plan, total grant funding is at 208.2 million. That includes the final year of the federal rescue funds. And then in years 2, 3, and 4, the combined amount in grant funding is 350.4 million. Total amount in the plan is 558.6 million. And then just for years 2, 3, and 4, I believe that was $116.8 million in each year. It's flat. And that'll obviously fluctuate depending on what grants are received. That concludes my review of the draft financial plan. If there are any questions, if not, I can defer to Executive Director Rowe.
Jeanette?
Yeah, thank you. Nathan, great job on that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so just a couple wrap-up points on our review and analysis of the financial plan. So the BFSA Act, it does require that the financial plan of the district be submitted on May 1st, no later than May 1st. So at this point, I just want to, reinforce with the board that it will need to get formally submitted by the mayor to the BFSA to be considered a formal submission, and it's getting reviewed by the Board of Ed tonight. So we expect those, that to be finalized shortly. Now, over the past couple of years, we've had some substantial, I have to take a sip of water, excuse me. There's been substantial uncertainty over the financial plan over the last few years, largely because directionally we knew that there was this large outstanding teachers contract that was out there, and what would the terms of that settled contract look like. So now that that's been settled, that uncertainty really has been removed, and we can take a look at what the real financial impact of that is. And then furthermore, the district did adjust their financial plan for the decreased enrollment that really is attributed to the pandemic. And as Mr. Barnes mentioned, nobody knows where those students went to. So it reflects those two big items. So from a high level finding, what we're looking at is, importantly, as Nathan mentioned, the district's budget is not structurally balanced, and that recurring expenditures exceed recurring revenues. There is adequate fund balance to fill those projected gaps over the 4 years. Fund balance, of course, being a one-time funding source. At the, or the projected budget gap, it is attributed to the teacher's contract that was recently completed. It's important to note that, this financial plan is probably worst case scenario, very conservatively based. So even with these conservative numbers at the end of this 4-year financial plan, the districts would maintain fund balance in accordance with their fund balance policy, which is to maintain at least a minimum of 4% of general fund expenditures as unassigned fund balance. So that is maintained under this plan. Moving forward, of course, district leadership will need to address the structural imbalance in future years. Could you put the slides up, Nathan? I guess folks could read it themselves, but
Yep. Just give me 2
thanks.
seconds.
All right, so that's the item that I just talked about. And then the next slide. Perfect, thank you. So the total amount included in the financial plan for both the recent teacher's contract and an amount allocated for negotiations of future labor agreements is 248.1 million. That's it's carved out, shown as contingencies within the financial plan. Doesn't really matter where it is. The key is that it's in the financial plan. Now of this, the majority of it is estimated to be necessary for the teacher's contract. There's about 7 million, but that's based on the existing staffing plan, assuming that there's no vacancies. And then the final slide is a reiteration of the risk we talked about last year in the financial plan, although it has been mitigated quite a bit in that the enrollment numbers have been brought down within the financial plan. So we continue to cite the general risk to foundation aid to the school district in the event that enrollment figures are different, significantly different from what has been projected. The financial plan furthermore repeats, this is the financial plan put together by the district. It repeats a recommendation from last year for a study to be performed and conducted to align teachers and facilities with the current number of students within the district. And we continue to agree with this recommendation and continue to advise that if enrollment continues to decline at a rate higher than what has been built into the plan, that this becomes more urgent of a study to be completed. And we also continue to recommend the district consider conducting an independent demographic study to understand and project out better forecasted enrollment. And that summarizes our conclusion points. A lot of the things that we talked about, the questions and the concerns, for lack of a better term, with the settlement of all these labor contracts this last year, they have been very busy. That financial uncertainty really, it's known now.
Jeanette, can I make a quick comment?
Absolutely.
You're probably tired of hearing of this, but to Nathan and Jeanette, I apologize for the tardiness of these reports. And I truly, personally want and need your review and feedback. It is simply the result of this was a tumultuous year, and I am almost a one-man band. I just can't get to everything. I understand how important it is. I work on them all the time, so I have these guardrails in my mind, but to get the documents out, I've just been late, and I apologize.
There is no need to apologize. I do want to enforce and reinforce that it's a very good quality financial plan. It was well thought out and lots of detail and information in there. So appreciate that. Thank you.
And we appreciate you coming to our meetings and answering questions as well. So thank you, Mr. Barnes, for everything on all that. Are there any more questions on the financial plan? If not, yeah, go
we have, this is Jeanette. In the past, or rather, just now a minute ago, in the recommendations portion, Jeanette, you just read it for us. That is to say, aligning staffing. How did you put it? Aligning to better project student census in order to more closely align staffing needs. In the past, we have raised the question of physical plant. And what are there, 55 buildings? And we understand how difficult it is to mothball a building. And we understand that. However, isn't that also, how should I put it, an index to be analyzed in terms of future needs, as opposed to something that is absolute and static?
Should I?
you can go ahead, Mr. Barnes.
If I understand your question correctly, yeah, absolutely. In the executive summary to the budget and to the adopted budget and in the 4-year plan, we absolutely recognize the need to study both our facilities and the school-based staff, not central office, in terms of these enrollment decreases. All I can say is that the issue is recognized and it's brought up in all of our budget processes and the school-based budget process specifically. There is a tremendous amount of, let's call it, political and community pressure that goes into some of those staffing decisions and building closing decisions. And we're trying to get everything on the table to address it because it has to be addressed.
Right. And of course, that's well put. There's, in terms of physical plant, in terms of building closures,
Yep.
My goodness, there's a gigantic political
Right.
dimension to that. Jeanette, in terms of our recommendation, is it appropriate to add the fact that planning will require alignment across staffing needs, census numbers, and physical plant needs? I mean, it's not explicitly stated, but simply to echo what we heard just now, and it repeats something we've said in the past.
Absolutely, we can
Yeah.
make some changes. Did somebody have a comment? I thought I heard something for a second. I was just looking at it now. So the way it exists right now is I'm quoting the district's financial plan right now. To quote, prepare a study to assist in aligning staffing and facilities over the long term to student counts.
Mhm.
Is that what you're referring to, or did you want an expansion on the alignment of the facilities specifically?
Jeanette, do you want us to amend the resolution that's in the board book?
It includes, how should I put it, the index facilities, right?
It
Yes.
does.
Okay, then, good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? If not, we have a draft resolution on the 2024-2027 financial plan as a whole that reiterates the information to be submitted to BFSA for the financial plan to be approved. This draft resolution was emailed to you. It is consistent with the resolution approved earlier this month and has been updated to reflect the reduction in cannabis tax estimates revenues from the city's 2023-24 adopted budget. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
As moved.
All right, second.
Second.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. The final item of business is to affirm the recommendation of the Audit, Finance and Budget Committee to approve the BFSA's 2023-2024 budget and the 24-27 financial plan. This document is included under tab 1 of your board book. The accompanying draft resolution is included under tab 5. May I have a motion to approve this item?
As moved.
Okay, second. Thank you. Is there any discussion? I think, Jeanette, you've done a great job in keeping costs down, and it's amazing how much work your staff does on a week-to-week basis, and all the other meetings that we see that you have throughout the month besides our meetings here. And I want to let you know that I think the board really appreciates the hard work that you and the staff are doing. And we think it's an important part of keeping the city and the school district and the other covered agencies up to date and in good shape. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to approve, or did I already do that? Okay, Jeanette, and seconded by Andy. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. I don't see anyone in the room from the public. If there is, yes, Jeanette?
Could we just go back and approve the minutes quickly?
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yep.
At the beginning of the meeting, we didn't have a quorum. We've moved the vote on the minutes. If we can, is there a motion to accept all 3 minutes? I'll go back and find out the dates just to make sure as we go through this.
Minutes are from our meetings dated March 8th, 2023, May 17th, 2023, and our special meeting that was held on June 5th, 23.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
As moved.
Okay, second. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes. We've approved the minutes. I don't see anyone here from the public. So our last item is to move into executive session. May I have to talk about legal issues? I will now ask for a motion to convene into executive session for that purpose. The BFSA staff will move us into a separate discussion room. Please wait for the transition. Is there a motion?
As moved.
Okay, second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay,
Aye.
we'll move into executive session.
One moment.
right, let's get this screen off. Hi, Nikita. Could
Hi. Out of
you,
executive session?
yes, we're out of
Yes.
executive session. If you want to take the screen down and we'll vote to
Okay,
exit. Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right. May I have a motion to exit executive session and reconvene the meeting?
As moved.
Okay, second. Thanks, Andy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we're out of executive session. The purpose of our executive session was to receive legal advice from our attorney. There is no action to be taken at this time. Is there any new business? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
As moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor? Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you.
great first day of summer, and
Oh, yeah.
we'll go from there. I now have to vote out my contract, so everybody can vote on that. So we'll see how this goes. This will
luck.
be a more fun meeting. So I don't
Well,
know.
make sure we analyze it.
Yeah, I think everybody's analyzing it. And Kathy actually worked really hard. It's a little bit different from the Como administration. She actually showed up and said, how do we get these contracts done? And worked with everybody to get it worked out. So I think everybody's going to be happy. Okay, thanks, everybody. We'll see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
everyone. Bye now.